Welcome everyone to today's presentation, our final one of the Oklahoma Learning Innovation Summit for 2019. And we are really fortunate. We are ending with a great one today. So my name is Kyle Foster, and I am a staff member with the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education, and I'll be helping to moderate today's session. Before we get started, just a few things as far as housekeeping items. The best experience you'll get today will be to listen with your computer speakers. If you have to call in to listen, and that's the only option, that's okay, but you'll get the best experience if you're able to use your computer, so we highly recommend that. The next item that I wanted to everyone be aware of is for today's presentation, we'll be using the Q&A function of the webinar. So if you have questions as we go along, just type those in the Q&A box and we'll answer those as we go along, and we'll also have time for questions at the end of the presentation. And today's session will be recorded along with all of the other sessions for the Learning Innovation Summit, and you can access those online at onlineexcellence.onenet.net. So if you want to go, feel free to share it with your colleagues or people who couldn't be here today. Feel free to do that as well. The other thing that I wanted to do before we get started is to congratulate the winners of our 2019 Oklahoma Online Learning Excellence Award due to the summit. These awards are coordinated by the Council for Online Learning Excellence here in Oklahoma. Nominations are submitted by people at institutions, and they're reviewed by the peers and colleagues of these winners. So the winner of the Teaching Award for 2019 is Professor Don M. Pierce of the University of Central Oklahoma. The Institute for Learning Environment Design, also at UCO, is the recipient of this year's Innovation Award. And our Leadership Individual Award goes to Marcy Grant of Southwestern Oklahoma State University. So if you know any of those folks, be sure to congratulate them whenever you see them. And they'll be officially recognized at the April State Regents meeting for their accomplishments. So with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation to our actual presenter today. This is Kenny Tapp, and he teaches at OCCC, Oklahoma City Community College, as well as some courses within the Russo system, which are regional universities here in Oklahoma. So Kenny is going to talk to us today about a practical guide to teaching online. So with that, Kenny, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kyle. I hope everyone can hear me. We did the sound check in a few minutes before we started broadcasting. As you could tell, I am not in an office. I'm in my backyard office. We'll say that. I decided to move everything out to my backyard because it's such a nice day. I am actually in Austin, Texas. I teach entirely online, and I hold true to the spirit that if I'm going to teach an online class for my students so that they can be anywhere geographically to take the course and also time of day, then okay, I can too while teaching. And so I have quite the setup out here. I've got a wired mic into my laptop to kind of help with audio because, well, the does can get kind of loud, and we're probably about 20 miles away from the approach runway of the Austin Airport, so occasionally a Southwest jet might fly over. But always improving audio is important, and just in case a rogue cloud streams by, I've got a light so you can kind of help illuminate me a little bit. But we will talk about some of these things that go into preparing for a live webinar or how that can apply to teaching for your class. You know, I've also got a long Ethernet cable that goes back to my wireless router so that I've got a hard connection for internet, so there's not going to be, or it will mitigate the chances that a signal might decrease a little bit. So, all right, welcome to the presentation. Let me click over and share share my screen. There we go. I assume everybody can see it on there. All right, I do teach, currently this semester, I teach physical science at Oklahoma City Community College, physical science at Southwestern Oklahoma State University, and astronomy at Northeastern State University. In my past, I have taught online for UCO, and I've taught on campus at UCO and OU, in addition teaching on campus at OCCC. So I've had a lot of experience in the last, going on 14, 15 years of teaching on campus, and then teaching in the last 5 years online. So in this presentation, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about practical ways to teach online classes that I have found very useful and to some degree very successful. By no means am I a perfect educator or perfect online educator, but these are lessons learned that I've gone through, and as you'll see, it takes time to build up and be comfortable with it, so don't worry if you're just now getting into online teaching or trying to motivate other educators. I'm not sure if that will play. Oh, there we go. So this is a very quick title animation that I made for the Oklahoma Learning Innovation Summit a few years ago. That animation was built in Adobe After Effects. If you have any experience in doing or using Photoshop, then you can use some of the software like Adobe After Effects to create some very unique and interesting animations. And as we'll talk about, video is one of the biggest ways to grab learners' attention, especially learners of the younger generations. You just have to look at the news reports or the data that's out there that looks at how our students that are coming into the classroom, the younger learners, ages 20 and below, have predominantly switched to using Instagram versus Facebook. And Instagram is primarily a platform for sharing visual imagery. So we'll talk a little about that, about the motivation going into it. Now, my history in doing online e-learning goes all the way back to my first semester when I taught for UCO. Now, this is when I taught at UCO, but I previously had taught at OU and OCCC. So this was a simple web page that I had developed that I would steer my students to. And this is actually before UCO went to D2L Brightspace. But I provided an opportunity on a custom web page for my class where they could download PDF copies of the lectures, they could download PDF copies of homework, everything related to the class, they could go and download it. And it got to a point where students were heavily depending on being able to go there and download the lectures before I'd give them in class, or being able to go there and get a copy if they needed to see it. But also, I started noticing students would regularly load those up on their laptops if they would bring them to class. So this kind of set the stage for me eventually to get into online courses, because I was already experimenting with doing some HTML web design that would help communicate with students in designing these online classes. I just thought I'd share with that a simple screen grab from way back in spring of 2010 on that. Okay. So there's a picture I took of my backyard yesterday morning. Just a little bit after sunrise, I was sitting out here on the patio drinking coffee and grading a bunch of coursework. I grade a lot on my iPad. And I want to share this simple thing with you, is that an online course equals freedom, both for the student and the educator. And here's what I'm talking about. There is both a temporal freedom, a freedom of time, because we have a lot of students that are maybe they're adult students, but we have a lot of students that have part-time, full-time jobs that are taking these online classes out of necessity because it better meets their lifestyle, better meets their demands of life. We already have been talking about this in the Learning Innovation Summit, but it's worth repeating that, just as much there's a freedom of time for our students and to take the course at their leisure and at their convenience. There's also a freedom of time for the faculty, because we're not confined to that 90-minute window to do a lecture. But there's also a spatial freedom, right? There's a geographic freedom. We are able, through our online classes at institutions, able to connect to students anywhere there's an internet connection. I used to do a lot of storm chasing when I was an undergrad at OU and going out to western parts of Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle and remote parts of Kansas. And that was before Wi-Fi and cell phone data existed, really. So our mode of operation was to stop at public libraries to access the internet for free. So, that was that was 20 years ago. So we now know that people in rural parts of Oklahoma can access high quality internet speeds for the most part. And so that means that they now have a pathway into achieving their own goals into taking online courses from a variety of institutions. But there's also spatial freedom for the faculty, for instructors, because as I'm just showing you, I can grade a bunch of student work from the comforts of my backyard instead of being in an office. There's also some freedom. I teach entirely online, so I'm able to travel more. So that iPad, as I'm going to share with you over the course of this talk, really allows for me to engage in students because I take a lot of use of different apps while I'm traveling. Earlier this semester, I spent 3 weeks in South America, and I kept in constant contact with my students, and they knew I was traveling, but they had no problem still contacting me through email or text, and they were still getting regular updates in their courses. So I just wanted to mention that because there is a lot of benefits to investing into online courses, whether you're the faculty, whether you're the student, or whether you're the department in there. Okay, so this presentation, I'm going to focus on 3 main areas and what I call systems. When you go into deciding you're going to embrace and teach your first online course, which, by the way, one of my mentors at OCCC from when I first started there back in 2007 once told me that you never really start to feel comfortable teaching a class until after the 3rd time. And at that time, we were referring to an on-campus course. I would suggest that that also applies to online classes. So don't worry. There's going to be a lot of learned lessons and mistakes made and you know, all sort corrections made as you go through it, and your first time teaching online to when you're teaching it 5 years, 6 years later. So it is important, though, that I think that you establish some very important critical systems when you go to teaching online. So here are the 3 systems that I see. Creating a course template for the online learning experience. What do I refer to that? Well, I've done a lot of Quality Matters training, and so a lot of my course design comes from that. But having a consistent structure to your course, a structure like a backbone, really, that can serve no matter what course you teach. It can serve the interest of all types of different courses. It has a specific structure to your learning modules, to how you present exams or different other assessments and homework. All of that stuff goes into play there. The second system is a productivity workflow for online teaching. For example, if you have to, for example, I'm a Mac person. I switched entirely to Mac when I was in grad school, and then I was a little bit, I guess, nervous on how my using Mac to teach or Apple computers to teach was going to play with our on-campus systems, because a lot of the classrooms are all Windows-based. But now, my productivity workflow starts with my iPhone, even involves my iPad, involves my MacBook Pro, the laptop, and even my Mac Pro desktop. So I do that out of convenience because I am assured a seamless integration of anything I'm working on because it's going through the same or similar operating systems on that. Also, and I'll show some examples here coming up soon, if I film something on my iPhone, I can airdrop it to my iPad to edit it in an iMovie editing software app, or I can airdrop it to my laptop, and then I can also email it or convert it, send it through USB over to my desktop to work on it there. And it's a QuickTime movie file, so all of the Apple software is meant to work with that kind of software. That's an example of what I think of as a seamless kind of workflow. Another system that I look at is student expectation and performance standards. So I have a very principled structure for how students are to submit work, when to submit work, etc. And I'll cover that coming up soon. But those are all set in place, and those are the same for all of my courses, so that it creates an easier workflow for me and an easier workflow for the students. And I think it's helped reduce a lot of stress and anxiety for myself as an educator, but also reducing stress and anxiety for the students. And by the way, everything we're going to talk about applies to face-to-face on-campus courses. Right? I mean, in recent years, you may have experienced in these winters, we may have a school closure for a snow event. Well, losing one lecture, it could be quite stressful for both the teacher and the students in terms of, well, now we've got to figure out how to cover that content or material at a later date, or, change the schedule around. So if you're already experimenting with doing online course design, or at least creating a single any online learning management system for your college, having that available will mitigate any kind of issue that you might have on campus where you have to have a sudden closure. And so I think it's really good for all faculty, all instructors to dabble in doing online course design, irregardless if you're teaching an online class or a face-to-face class. So here's an example of a graphic that I use in our online astronomy course. This is the graphic that a student would see when they first entered the course. It says, welcome, launch your course experience now, and then, there's the button. Now, there's not an actual interactive part. It's simply a link. They click it, and it goes to the first learning module that I want them to go to start the course. But I'm setting the stage just with that simple graphic for our astronomy class with the imagery of the shuttle launch that, it's kind of got that sense of exploration, but also this is just something new. It's something different. It's not just a simple link with an underline underneath of it. So, and by the way, everything that you see there in that graphic, the moon, the shuttle, all of that is Creative Commons media content, stuff for free. You can use it freely from NASA, which I heavily rely on NASA and NOAA and some other federal agencies to use a lot of those graphics for free. Okay, so when I talk about a system for course templates, here's what I'm talking about. And this is a screenshot from my online astronomy class at NSU, where you can see how I've kind of orientated some of the main parts and sections of that online class. Okay, so on-campus lectures equal learning modules. When you go to design your online class, hopefully you've already taught it on campus. In fact, I would suggest that you already have to make your life easier in designing these learning modules. But a learning module represents a lecture that you would have given on campus. So, in a typical 16-week semester, there might be 12 lectures. Well, that's going to be 12 learning modules. So that kind of automatically helps you establish the framework for designing the online class. Each learning module is self-contained. Those are the parts that every one of my learning modules contain. There's an overview, lecture, extra resources, Q&A, review and required activities section. So the Q&A is simply a discussion forum for that particular unit. Extra resources would be things that I think are pretty cool for students to read, but not necessarily required. The lecture is usually, yes, that's where you go to get something from me as the instructor to learn more about that topic. The overview sets the student up for success. It says, here are the learning objectives that we're going to be covering for this lecture or this part of the course. And then here is a summary of the main important things. And then here's a list of what you need to do to achieve or complete this particular learning module. One of the things that I try to live by is consistency is the key to excellence. So when I talk about consistency, I'm thinking of consistent structure to the learning modules. Every learning module looks the same. Course resources. As you'll see here, I have sections called Astronomy EBook. Well, you go there to find the EBook chapters or links that you will use in a course. In addition, I provide those in all the learning modules. I have a thing called Exam Prep. In all of my online classes, I have a module called Exam Prep, and that's where I'll post the study guides or review sessions. I'll also post the exams themselves there. So the student knows, based on this course schedule, they go there to find anything related to the actual exam. There's also a thing for homework explorations. Now, instead of just calling them homework, I add the word explorations simply because it adds that little extra element of mystery or excitement, maybe. I just try to build some sort of excitement into the homework instead of just calling it homework. So students know where to go for those specific course resources, and that structure is replicated in all of my online classes, and also the structure of graded activities. So they know where to go find, whether it's in the homework module or the exam module or in the required activities parts of each learning module to find the weekly quizzes and such. And also, when we talk about consistency, there is also a consistency in how I deliver news and announcements. There's consistency in how I grade things. So that kind of consistency is what I'm thinking about when I think of my motto of consistency is the key to excellence. I'm constantly striving for it, and it's a constantly moving target, it feels like sometimes. The last part of the course template is making things universally accessible. When you invest time to make something universally accessible, you're doing three things. One, you are directly helping learners that have specific challenges, disabilities, etc. So whether the student is using a screen reader to read your lectures or the content in a course, or a student may actually just be listening to it. There are all sorts of challenges that learners go through. And it doesn't have to only be someone who has gone through the student support services at the college. It could be someone who, frankly, maybe they had a surgery and so they rely more on hearing than visual. We don't know. Our students go through all sorts of things. So recognizing that when you invest in making things universally accessible by that definition for the disabilities, then you are making things more accessible for all learners. Learners of different devices. Making things universally accessible, meaning every learner gets to access the course in the same kind of way and experience. So one of the things that particularly D2L Brightspace did a few years ago when they did their major overhaul, a release of that platform, is that they made it literally universally accessible, or the universal course experience across all devices. So it didn't matter if the student was coming in on a mobile device like a tablet or phone, or a laptop or desktop, the experience was the same. Now, if you have gone into your college's LMS and to see how your own online class looks, there might be subtle differences when a student's on their phone, on their maybe an iPad or a tablet, or even on their laptop. And I get students all the time who will send me screenshots of something, and I can see immediately, oh, that's how it looks on their end on a smartphone or whatever it is. But also, you know, making things universally accessible applies to students, learners of varied styles. You know, in my particular course, I offer audio podcasts, I offer video lectures, I offer PDF notes that go along with slides. I offer just straight up HTML web page that has graphics and slides and text that explain what would otherwise be a lecture I would give on campus. And so that has really, I think, benefited students of all variety of learning styles so that they're better equipped to succeed. It's not like they just are only getting a lecture from a video or only getting a lecture from PowerPoint. I've got different types of delivery into the course. Here's another example from SWOSU. There is a modified version of that click here to launch kind of thing, kind of builds the momentum, kind of also sets the stage for like welcome into the course. Here is an example where I have adopted, which by the way is in all my courses, OER, an open textbook. And so I'm telling students up front when they enter the course, do not purchase a textbook or access code until you've gone through and read the syllabus and what we're going to be doing in the course. Because the way that I see it, all of the courses that I teach are introductory courses. Very few of my students are going to be science majors. So this is one of the few opportunities in the student's college life that I'm going to get a chance to connect with a student about science. So I want them to have a very, as much possible, a pleasurable experience going through the course. And part of that is let's mitigate, remove, reduce as much as we can the costs associated with taking the course. And with the resources that are available in my arena of courses, there are a vast amount of free resources. So it just kind of makes sense to use OER. Also, from day one, the students have access to the textbook. So there is not a delay for them to access something that they can read. But there on the left, you can see, we've got things as you would expect in Canvas that they use in SWOSU. They go straight to the syllabus, and then there's some announcements, and then they go into the learning modules and things like that. Here's an example of the layout of my course at OCCC. At OCCC, I've chosen to present this in version of topics. So there you see the same replicated structure where there's the homework section, there's the exam section, and then boom, there are all the different learning modules for the different topics as we go through the course, which, by the way, the same thing happened at SWASU. You just had to click modules, and then you would see all of those there as well. So I have replicated, I have found a system that works for me in presenting these learning modules. When you go into one of those topics, one of those learning modules, then a student is presented with, there's the lecture, there's some notes, there's some extra resources, there's the e-textbook, there's a review, which presents a no-stakes opportunity for students to basically learn, to figure out how much they comprehend the material, and then there's the assessment that's there as well. In my learning modules, I present the overview web page, which sometimes is a video, but it presents the learning goals, which would also be learning objectives, and then things, what you need to do in order to achieve this particular learning module. One of the things that I do is that I do not rely on the LMS calendar features, whatever they may be. I produce a web page for every class that has an entire list of our course schedule. And this is meant so that students can print it out on 1 or 2 pages and use it as a checklist when they go through the semester. It lists every single due date as we go through. So in this particular example, I want to highlight here that there are due dates that occur at 12 o'clock noon. And I will talk a little bit more about that coming up. But my strategy in deadlines for students has been always to have it on a Monday at 12 p.m. noon. I know that a lot of online classes have their deadlines at 11:59 p.m. at night, usually on a Sunday. Well, there may be some issues with that because Sundays, usually the college or university is closed. Also, when is the help desk available for students that may have a technical issue trying to submit something? It's not going to be open usually at midnight or at 11 p.m. at night. So I have chosen to have my deadlines throughout the entire semester, always on a Monday. So students that might get kind of flustered and say, oh, well, the rest of my courses, the deadlines are on Sunday nights. Well, I just say, okay, just pretend that this course's deadlines are on Sunday night. So that gives you a half-a-day buffer if something were to happen. But I have found that ever since I produced this course schedule, that has enabled students to meet the deadlines a lot more efficiently because I have noticed that some students do depend on whatever the calendar is showing them on the LMS. And so I just make it up front. Here is the expectation for the entire semester and make it easy for them to print out. So also my courses are built with these textbooks. This is for, I use this astronomy textbook both in my astronomy course and my physical science courses. Feel free to check it out. This is what an OER looks like. This is what an e-textbook looks like. If you've never looked at one, or hey, you have an interest yourself in going to astronomy. But here's what I love about this is that the folks at OpenStax make this particular textbook available both in web format as a PDF. You can order a print copy, and now you can download it for your tablet, whether you want it in an iBook or as a Kindle. So there are a lot of ways for students to interact with that textbook that other than just being a straight up PDF. I use mobile apps heavily. What I'm showing you there are the different grader apps for D2L, Blackboard, and Canvas. And I can tell you that for me on an iPad, it makes grading a breeze. It makes it so much easier than sitting at my laptop or desktop because in many cases, I can reference information more quickly through the app while grading, but it's just a seamless process. Now, one of the things that I have incorporated into my course design is that all student work is submitted as PDFs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up, but I do that because that makes it easier to grade through a mobile app. And one of the cool things about mobile apps is that, particularly on D2L, you can grade things offline. So I can load up like term papers, board a plane, and over that flight grade things. And when I land, connect to Wi-Fi and all the grades update. There are useful benefits to that. There is another app here that you're going to see, and it's called the AnyConnect. I think my video is blocking it. Either way, that's a Cisco app. It's free to download the app, but that is if your college or university has a VPN. And having an opportunity to connect into your institution through a VPN promotes obviously security, but some of the things that you may need to access at your institution may require you to come in on a secure connection. So that really is the benefit going in through like a web browser or email to get back to connecting with your students or with your college, no matter where you're at, whether you're at a Starbucks down the road or you're enjoying a beach in South Florida, wherever, having that capability is actually pretty important. Now, I will say that the other apps usually do a pretty good job of having secured, encrypted transmission through, especially through iOS. So there's not really much of a concern that I have for that. But just wanted to share with you the main apps that I use in terms of grading and then connecting back to the college. Here's an example of the, yep.
Oh, sorry, we did have a question. Someone's wondering if you could give more information about the BB Grader app.
Sure. So if you are on an iOS device, so whether it's, and typically these apps, these grader apps are built for the iPad, not necessarily for the iPhone. But to be honest, I don't know if all three have an option for the iPhone. I know that D2L does not, for example. So for the Blackboard grader app, I have actually found the Blackboard grader app to be a little bit more useful than the web version of grading things in Blackboard. Because of the way that Blackboard is set up, it's using layered windows, so that can be kind of problematic. I've got an example here coming up of that Blackboard grader app, so hold tight, and I'll probably finish answering your question there. In this particular example of the D2L grader app, I can choose which assessments I want to download. You'll see on the graphic on the right, you choose the arrow, you highlight it. It will automatically download all of the submissions for the students for that and store it to your device. So then you're free to go off Wi-Fi and go grade it. On the left is what it looks like. Now, this is a document a student submitted as a PDF. PDFs work natively with Apple, which is another reason why I have my students do PDFs. Another reason is that a PDF is less likely to transmit a virus than a Microsoft document. So but also there's another, I think, a huge positive impact on students is that if the student doesn't already know how to create a PDF, then they're going to learn how to create a PDF in my course, and that is a marketable professional skill that they can have when they get out into the workforce, because let's face it, everything is digital now. So the more that our students can learn how to create these digital tools and digital assets and everything else. Also, I'll say this, as you're looking at that, if that was a Word document, if there might be formatting issues. If you've ever opened up a Word document that a student sent you on your own laptop or desktop, if they had a different version of Word than you do, there may be some formatting issues and you're not going to see it as the way they intended it. Likewise from you. And we'll go into that here in a minute. This is another example of D2L Grader app. Here are more PDFs submitted by my students. This is where I've either had them create something with some computer software or hand draw diagrams. Students know how to do this, so it's easy to ask them to embed their own graphics, their own images into their submissions to create a PDF. And by the way, if you are looking for a free way to create a PDF, most students have a Gmail account. And if you have a Gmail account, you can access Google Docs. Google Docs can natively export documents as a PDF. Here is the Blackboard app. All right, so this is how it looks when you're viewing the actual document. Let me advance. Okay, yeah. So this is an example of students from my astronomy class that have submitted homework, or actually this is a lab, where they have taken my instructions document and then printed it out themselves and hand drawn it and either scanned it or took an image of it and then created their own document from there. So this students find this very easy for them to do, where they print it out like they would in an on-campus class, draw the diagrams, do what they need to, and then find a way to resubmit it. When I say find a way, if they don't have an ability to scan it through a scanner or using a copy machine like an on-campus library or something, then there are free apps that you can have on your phone to create a PDF from taking a picture, or just simply take the picture and then embed that or insert that image into your own document to export. So students find it's pretty easy. Here's what it looks like. When you go into the Blackboard app, on the right-hand side, it will automatically tell you, you can choose all to do completed, and it will automatically show you things that students have submitted that you still need to grade. So that's a great overview of being able to look at, okay, here are some things I need to grade and get done. And, you know, if you're looking at this, you're like, wow, that looks like a lot of stuff that Tapp needed to grade. And this is from 2018. Sometimes I allow students extensions or revisions, and we'll talk about that more coming up. So this could be the case where maybe a student submitted something that I couldn't open because they had some kind of weird file format or something, so I asked them to resubmit it. So this works out really well to keep track of what you've graded. Another image on the left is another image of students taking pictures of what they've done for a lab exercise for me and then submit it as homework. So I hope that answered your question. Let me know. Kyle, are we good on that?
I believe so.
Awesome, awesome. I highly recommend downloading the Grader app or the app for your LMS, whether it's Blackboard, Canvas, or D2L. Unfortunately, and maybe I would become a millionaire if I did this, I don't think Moodle has an app yet. That would be amazing if it did. But yes, take advantage. And I'll tell you what motivated me to start using these Grader apps is there was one time at UCO, I had a stack of term papers. And I was going out to the parking lot, and I think I had them in a box, and I dropped the box, and you know what happens then, because it's always windy in Oklahoma. These papers spread across the parking lot. Not to mention, I just got tired of carrying these stacks of papers. So I realized enough with that. I can have them all do PDFs, submit it through D2L, and I can grade them all on an iPad and skip trying to hold on to these papers. And students love submitting. And so I did that even in my on-campus classes. I started having them submit it on the LMS, even though we were on campus. And it just made it so much more easier for the faculty to grade things and not have to worry about handling all these papers. Okay. Let me double check that I haven't skipped the slide. Nope, we covered that. Okay, good. Let me talk about student standards. So the image that you see is a screenshot of what one of the learning modules look like in my OCCC class. It's the same kind of structure as you'll find in all of my other courses. So I've already talked about all deadlines that I have are at 12 p.m. noon on Mondays. That's because that's regular college business hours, and I know that the help desk is available. So that is a standard. I'd never change from that unless I'm providing some sort of extension, but my students know from day one, all deadlines are on Mondays at 12 noon. And yes, there are going to be some times in the first week or two that students are, you know, used to doing 11 p.m. at 11:59 p.m. And so they may interpret that as a 12 a.m. deadline. But for the most part, students are easy to adapt to it. And I just do that as a standard. All my classes everywhere had the same deadline, 12 p.m. noon on Mondays. All work must be submitted as a PDF in the LMS. That makes it iPad and app friendly, makes it happier for grading, makes me happier for grading. Zero formatting issues. I am assured that I'm seeing the document as the student wanted me to see it. Additionally, if I distribute all of my stuff as PDF to the students so they see exactly what I'm giving them. Also, by doing PDFs, I am mitigating or eliminating the opportunity for viruses to infect my systems and platforms. And so that just makes it, I think, just easier. And then students are developing marketable professional skills and learning how to create a PDF. One of the things I also establish as a student standard is I accept no late work, none whatsoever. I set that up front in my syllabus that that's the policy, no late work. And most of that comes from the fact that I just don't want to get into bookkeeping. I don't want to say, okay, well, this student, I'm going to do all of these different delays and things. We know that in an online class, we want things to be on a specific schedule so that students are set up for success when they get to the assessments or the activities and things. And we know as educators that we want to walk students through a particular process of the course or of the what we're wanting them to learn. For example, you want them to go through a couple learning modules before they get to the homework so that they'll know how to do the homework. So that's all of keeping students on task, of keeping students on deadlines. And I very rarely have issues with this. In fact, most students, when they have some kind of serious issue, will start off a very apologetic email. Professor Tapp, I know that you don't accept late work, but this is what happened. So by having that policy, I do also open up the door and create opportunities for extensions and revisions. So if there is a medical issue or a student stressed out because they've gone through something, I have had already this spring semester students who have lost a parent, have lost a grandmother, have had lost a cousin, and those are traumatic experiences in those students' lives, and I get that. So as long as students communicate with me, I'll set them up for an extension with no late penalty whatsoever, just kind of helping mitigate the stress and helping that student out. But for the most part, no late work just keeps everybody on task, and keeping students on task helps them develop professional qualities to be a more marketable candidate when they get out into the real world beyond college. Also, I set up all my classes where the student deliverables are equal to or greater than student assessments. So for example, in most of my courses, all of the exams, including the final, usually total up between 40 and 45% of the final grade, which means that there is 50, 55, 60% of their final grade is coming from the things that they produce, the things that they create. And I do that for very specific reasons because, yes, we do know that when a student takes an online class and they take like a multiple choice quiz, are we really assured that that's the student that's taking it? But also they have access to using other resources. They can access stuff on their phone, like I can be texting if I really wanted to, and you might not know it other than the fact that I'm glancing down a little bit. So to mitigate those issues, I just make any kind of assessment in the LMS worth less. I want to know. So a majority of their grade is coming from the fact that I want to know that they can draw a diagram to explain something, or that they can, explain things in text, or whatever the case may be. So those are, and also when you're asking them to create things, they're creating digital content. And so that's a marketable digital skill for them. A lot of these decisions are data driven. When I do this survey at the beginning of every course, I ask my students, do you own a cell phone? Yes. 99 point blah, blah, blah percent, 98.9% say yes, they own a cell phone. Do they own a smartphone? A majority of them have a smartphone. So I know they're capable of taking pictures. I know that they are capable of accessing the internet, and which, by the way, I do include in my syllabus that some assessments require them to take pictures so that they know that up front. Do they own a desktop computer, or do they own a laptop? And in this scenario, most of my students own laptop computers. So that really tells me that, yes, these students are mobile in how they access the course and how they consume the course content and how they create their own work. I also ask students, point blank, do you use a search engine? Yes, they do. Do you use YouTube to search for answers to problems? And I'll tell you, this was confirmed. I was on a flight recently, and there was a girl who was texting a question, how do you blank? And she typed the question into YouTube to get the answer. So students, I think, this is an indication that students are wanting video answers to their questions instead of reading about it in a standard search engine. Here I ask students, would you purchase an ebook or would you download a free ebook? And predominantly, yes, they would download the free ebook. So that only helped confirm that, yes, I need to offer the free open textbook as possible. The last system I'm going to talk about, I know we've been going a little bit. Oh, was there a question?
We do have a quick question.
Awesome.
How do you accommodate students who don't have a smartphone?
Well, because I make things universally accessible, students can access the course, can do what they need to create create the work, to do their work and submit their work through a non-smartphone device. So in terms of taking the pictures, there are only a few times in the coursework where a student will have to take a picture of something that they're doing. So they can figure out ways to mitigate that. Perhaps they have a webcam, or perhaps they can borrow a digital camera from someone. But for the most part, I don't actually require students to have a smartphone because I make things universally accessible. I'm not worried about it if they have a smartphone or not. And I hope that might have answered the question there. I think when the numbers are, greater than 80% of the class has a smartphone, then honestly, I've never encountered the issue. And I usually have about 200 students a semester. I've never had the issue of a student coming to me and saying, you know what, I don't have a smartphone. I can't do this. So I really don't know what the solution would be out of that. Did that take care of the question there, Kyle?
Yes, and if you want to pause, we have another one, or
Okay.
do you want to? Okay.
No, let's go for it.
On authenticity, do you require a proctored final exam?
Great question. So, I'll give you an example at OCCC. At OCCC, I require for every exam, and the exams are online. I stay true. If it's an online class, then it has to be 100% online. And frankly, and we'll talk a little about this in the upcoming slides, things are getting tougher for us. We know that for credit hours and enrollment. And that is it's getting tougher, which makes we have to be more competitive. So a student, why are they choosing an online class? Because they want to have the freedom both of time and geographic location. So that being said, how do I authenticate that the person is actually them taking an assessment? So at OCCC, when they take an exam, there is two components. There is the actual assessment that they do, which contains whether it's the multiple choice questions or the short essay questions, whatever. And then there is like the drop box, where I tell them in the instructions up front, and they know this from day one of the course, and they are reminded of it before every exam. They are required within the 30 minutes after they press the submit button, when they finish the exam, they are required to take an image, whether it's from their webcam or a digital phone, of them holding their student ID. Now, I do get some students that don't have an OCCC student ID, so I'll allow them to use a driver's license or a student ID from a different institution, as long as it's the same name that they're enrolled in. And they have to upload that image into the Dropbox. So they're told about this in the course syllabus. So if they do have an issue where they don't have a webcam, they don't have a smartphone, then I'll work it out with them. And for some students, I can recall one or two students, they didn't know if they'd be able to do it with a smartphone, but they did have a webcam, and that worked out just fine. Here's what I'm doing. The image that they upload usually is a JPEG image. All of the images contain contain metadata. Inside the metadata of that image will tell me the exact date and time when they took that image. So that will let me know that the image was taken in the time frame that they took the exam. And also, if they took it with an iPhone or a smartphone, that also includes geographic data and other metadata, so that I know where they were at if I really wanted to look at it. So them having to take the selfie of them holding their student ID so I can see their face and I can compare it to their ID, to me, that is a great solution for authenticating that it's the actual student who's taking it. So I have eliminated the need for a proctored exam in that sense. But this all goes back that the assessments, they will not be worth more than 45% of their final grade. So I'm mitigating the authentication dramatically for that. Okay, that was a great question, by the way, and it's something that we all have to consider and take into account, especially, I mean, everything on the internet can be from any location. Do we have another question?
We do have a question about OER, so we can either, if you want to answer it now, or if you want to make it the first question at the end.
Let me make that the first question at the end. I appreciate that question, and I definitely want to talk about it. Let me get through this third system on productivity workflow, because the common question I get from a lot of faculty and other people that I interact with on these types of webinars and et cetera is, well, how in the world do you create this content? I'll give you a great example here in about 30 seconds or less. I've already told you I have a complete Apple solution, and that includes my iPhone, iPad, the Mac laptop, and the Mac desktop. And that's just out of convenience. I will never add a PC to that mix, because I'm not assured that the stuff that I'm creating on the Mac platform will look and feel the same and I can interact with it on a PC. If you're going to invest in doing the best that you can in an online course by creating content, then I would recommend exploring Apple, because Apple, their devices are made for content creators all the way through. And here's another thing. If you're worried that you may not get campus support, as long as an Apple store is within driving distance of your location, you can always get free technical support both in using software and also hardware issues from the Apple Store. I am visiting an Apple Store probably once a quarter to resolve different issues that I may be having on any of those devices. So that eliminates any kind of potential headache that I might have from a technical standpoint. Also, because I've got an Apple solution, I also want the seamless software solution. So I'm presenting these slides through Apple Keynote, which I can export as a PowerPoint. I can export in any other ways. It can import as a PowerPoint, but I'm using Apple Keynote because I can then use Keynote on my laptop, and I have Keynote as an app on my iPad and on my iPhone. So I can modify my presentations no matter where I'm at. Also, and here's a real cool thing. Write this down if you're paying attention casually. Write this down. If you are wanting to get into creating some content, look and see if your institution has a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud or Adobe CC. I'll give you an example. OCCC does. So all faculty has free access to the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. Most people might just go ahead and say, okay, well, that's for me to use on my laptop and desktop. And it's true. You can. Once you install it, you get the latest version of that software, whether it's Photoshop or the video editing stuff, for your laptop or desktop. But you also get free access to those Adobe apps. And so this is an example up on the top where I'm using the Adobe Photoshop app on my iPhone and iPad. And so while I was traveling in South America, I was still able to take graphics and draw on them and create new graphics and instantly add that to news or modify a lecture or something. So it really has really opened the doors for me since January of using these Adobe apps on my iPad and on my iPhone. And I'll say this, even if you're just wanting to post a cool picture on Instagram, well, Lightroom is one of the apps that Adobe offers, and you get that part of the Creative Cloud suite, and you can enhance your wonderful pictures for Instagram, et cetera. So there's personal and professional goals for that as well. I also utilize Google Docs, Google Drive, and Google Voice as a way for the software. And then the third system is distribution. How are you going to deliver your content? I highly recommend that if you produce any video or any of the custom content, media content that you create, you own it. It's your intellectual property, so you control where it's at all times. So because we have course shells that regenerate every semester, I put all of my media content on my private YouTube channel. So I have a lot of videos that are unlisted and some that are listed. I put them in my Google Drive. And then I also have, because of my relationship as an online educator, I technically have an unlimited Google Drive. So I put a lot of stuff on there. I also have access to other media platforms that are guaranteed to preserve my intellectual property rights for that. So I do not host any of my videos on any college-owned server. And that's just an effort to protect my own rights for it. But, and here's the cool thing, if I post something on my unlisted YouTube channel, then that gives me advanced tracking methods. I can see down to the server where students are accessing the content. I can see all of the demographic data for what devices and how long students are watching the different videos. So for me, it's important to post things on different platforms so that I can have the access to that data. Here's an example where I did an astronomy update for my class from Peru. And for my NSU class, I talked about what I was experiencing in the mountains of Peru. That was there at the base of Machu Picchu. I edited that on my iMovie app on my iPad. So I filmed the video with my iPhone, airdropped it over to my iPad, edited it, and then I was able to post it directly from there. So without the need of a laptop or desktop, I was able to do that very seamlessly throughout. So here's a look at some of the apps that I have on my iPad, which allows me, it's a mixture of things. There's Keynote, but then there's also the Apple software for me to do spreadsheets and documents. There's also Lightroom, which is for image manipulation, all sorts of things. And a couple examples of things that I've posted while traveling. You know, I shot video when I was on Iceland, so that would apply to my earth science classes or my geology lessons and modules. You know, traveling in Paris, I was able to share with students working on some GIS stuff about that. So, you know, having these apps handy allow for me to rapidly create content while I'm out and about instead of waiting until I come back to home base. Here's an example. I love this so much. I can airdrop things from my iPhone to my iPad. My iPad is the workhorse. It has a better capabilities to handle video editing than my iPhone. Plus, I don't want to run down my battery on my iPhone. So I will airdrop video that I've shot from the iPhone to my iPad and work on things there. And that may also be images, stuff that I can use in those particular apps. So for me, I find it very valuable. Just some examples of the videos that I do. I do welcome videos to welcome the class to the course, give an overview of what we're going to talk about, my expectations. I do news videos, whether I'm sitting at home or I'm on the side of a canal in Venice, and I'm talking about the full moon that's just over my shoulder. Those are quick videos I can add into it. I have lecture videos. Now, these lecture videos, one's in the field. There I'm talking about waves on the coast of the Gulf. There, the other one I'm talking about electricity, and I'm in a lab. Other lecture videos, or lab videos, I'm obviously in a lab. I will say this, that most of my lab and lecture videos are very formal in the sense that it's shot on a tripod, I've got a wireless mic or a wired mic, and I'm in a formal setting. I have been experimenting very recently with doing selfie videos, but those are just suggest this. Because we do want to close caption our videos, it is oftentimes easier to have captioning or transcripts produced of audio. And one of the things that I have found that when I offer, for example, here's a learning module where students are scrolling through and looking at a bunch of weather maps. Well, I could go through and do the alt text on each image, which would be paragraphs on each image, or I can provide the text transcript and also the audio podcast of me talking about every image. There is another value to do an audio podcast, and I do that quite regularly for exam reviews. I provide a sample exam for each exam that we do in the course. And so, but I don't provide the solutions. Instead, what I do is I do an audio podcast where I am going through the actual exam, and I'm just handpicking questions and talking about it and explain it. So the advantage of an audio podcast is that the student prints out the sample exam, they've got it right in front of them, they can listen to the audio podcast and just go right along. And, you know, I'm wearing my headphones out here in my backyard, so a student could technically do that anywhere because they've got headphones, and they can do that on their mobile devices as well. Here is that example of a meteorology sample exam podcast where I say, okay, this is audio only. So they click on it, boom, they can play it and start listening to it and working along the way. I also do infographics. I was flying back from a meteorology conference in Seattle about a year ago, and we flew by Mount Rainier, and I do have lectures on volcanoes. So I was taking pictures and shooting video and then using the apps and software to go in there and label it. This is a way for me to connect with students, and I think students really do desire for their instructors to share with them the passion of the science that they're teaching and where they're going along the way. Here's an example where I take pictures from Austin, Texas, look at a nighttime sky, I label it, and here I encourage students, go out and see what you can see in your own backyard. A lot of the things that I do, now I have developed this for my own use, is I have a 1-page, 3 months worth of what I call a social media agenda calendar. There is where I have listed every possible different thing that might happen. So for example, we're here in April. Yesterday was National Siblings Day. Today, it looks like it is National Submarine Day. So I do actually have some photos from a submarine that I toured. Unfortunately, none of it I don't have anything going on in my classes this week that would apply to submarines. But this is a way for me to engage students and say, hey, it is National Titanic Remembrance Day. Let's look at ocean currents, or here's how this would apply to ocean currents. This is a way for me to just connect to students through the news and announcements in a fun and spirited way. There's an example from Groundhog's Day, where I posted the climate outlook, and then we talked about it later in the weather course. Now, I teach earth science, I teach astronomy, meteorology. The stuff that I do doesn't only just apply to those sciences. Here's my good friend Kim Kiker at Oklahoma City Community College. We shot some video of her. This was where she wanted to be able to inform some students about things that are going to go on in lab, and this was a great video. We shot some video of one of our students doing a lung lab. It was awesome footage. I will say this, I snuck a picture of what healthy lungs and you know, the smoky tar lungs look like, posted it to my own social media, and people were like, wow. The things we do on campus and in our classes are of interest to people in the general public. So just because, don't feel afraid that you can share it. And actually, I think it's a way to engage people. Some quick tips, and I know we're running out of time. for creating content, search for related blogs by the pros, or simply follow people on social media. I love following as many of the different NASA entities as possible because they're all producing great content. And I see the stuff, and either I can use it or I can say, okay, well, I can take that graphic and modify it for something else in class and use it that way. So for me, by the different blogs and the different social media profiles, I can, well, I'm not sure what just happened there. Okay. I can find ideas for things that I can do in class. Thinking evergreen, how do you create content once that you can use for the next several semesters? And then think about when you're doing web design or web things for the web, making things responsive. HTML5 is a way to format the code so that it works well on a laptop or even on a phone or other smart device. Things that we do. Here's some quick ideas for promoting an online class. On the right-hand side is a poster I did way back in 2010 for promoting a weather course. On the left is an image that I just released out to the academic advisors at NSU to promote the summer course. And here I'm promoting free e-textbook. There are no book costs, no web codes, and then I'm even going as far as saying free apps. Now, these are apps from NASA that I'm going to suggest that they use, but they're all going to be optional. But I'm just making sure that students know that it's 100% online lab and lecture, and that there are these free e-textbook and free resources that they can use, and just kind of way to drum up some enrollment into the course and some excitement, recruitment, etc. I want to say this real quickly. More and more colleges are exceeding 50% of their course sections with online courses, which means that we're all going to have increased competition for credit hours. So I really feel that for colleges to be successful moving forward with enrollment, and they have to dedicate real resources and full-time positions to online teaching. It can't really be part-time investments into online courses, because that is it's never going to replace the on-campus learning experience. But as we are offering more and more online courses, there needs to be consistency to achieve excellence in those things. Preserving faculty intellectual property rights, following the QM certification model. So I have a couple courses that have the QM certification. So I am assured as an adjunct that, even if another person is assigned to teach the class, well, that's no longer QM certified because the QM certification stays with me. So it's a way for consistency and delivery of expectations or something for the students. So I think as more emphasis and more investments are put in online classes, we really need to preserve faculty intellectual property rights, intellectual property period, because we want people to put in a lot of hard work on these online classes. And you don't want to put in all the hard work if you're only going to end up getting to teach it once or twice. So there's a trade-off there, I think, that we can do. But also all of this stuff that we're doing, online courses or the creating the digital content, these are ways for us to serve the community. And every time we serve the community beyond the walls of our classroom, we are able to engage the public and increase the support of the public for what we're doing in higher ed. And in turn, that also increases student recruitment. So for example, if your institution offers astronomy classes, especially online astronomy classes, did they promote the total solar eclipse in August of 2017, which occurred in the first week of the fall semester? Did they promote in the last 24 hours the first photo ever of a black hole? So if there's a physics or astronomy element to your institution and that department or that college has a social media footprint, have they promoted those things? Because those things we talk about in class. So why not talk about it in the public sphere? Because that's only going to increase recruitment and public support along the way. Doing outreach. Some of the video lectures that I have done, I have modified. My mom is now a retired cosmetology teacher. I geared one of my video lectures on electricity for her class, and her students loved it. I have shared some of my infographics with state parks where I have taken the photos. And then there's an example on the left where I did an entire exhibit in the UCO library, just on cool stuff about astronomy and relating it, say, hey, yeah, learn more about this. So going above and beyond, I think, is important to engaging all of our audiences, really. And here is an example. I'll leave you with this: ideas, thoughts, and questions. I definitely want to hear them. I filmed one episode, what I call one episode. It was one lecture in a studio. And this is a picture of me sitting at what would be like a news desk, right? There is a chair, but I love that. And I get a tremendous amount of comments from my students on this video lecture because it feels like something they would see on TV, and that's on purpose because I don't want it to be a boring background and a boring presentation. So that is just some food for thought on different ways to present to your audiences. Thank you very much for the time. And I do know we had the one question on OER. What was that question?
Yeah, we did. So yeah, since we're a tiny bit over on time, if you wouldn't mind answering this question, and then I know you had your contact info up there for folks that might want to reach out to you. So we had a question, do you have recommendations for OER textbooks? So I know that you had shown OpenStax, but maybe just talk a little bit about what you look for in OER.
Sure. Well, one of the things that is kind of a pitfall of adopting an OER textbook is that a lot of us have built our lecture PowerPoints and our question pools on assessments from resources from the publishers. So once you move to an OER, you're not technically legally allowed to use those publisher provided resources, which is fine. There are lots of question pools out there, etc. What I look for in an e-textbook, I primarily rely on OpenStax. OpenStax, when they have a title, when they produce a title, they are investing $1 to $2 million in the development of that title. So the astronomy e-textbook had at least $1 million budget in developing it. And there is a tremendous amount of technical support behind them. So I tend to rely immediately on OpenStax. But frankly, you can assemble your own e-textbook from just finding open resources from our government agencies. If you're doing in the health sciences, you can look at NIH, CDC. For the physical sciences, we can look at NASA and NOAA, USGS, things like that. But also there are some other great resources. I know we're building some repositories in Oklahoma. There are other institutions around the country that also have repositories, which is basically like a place where you can go and with links of resources. So don't be afraid of just saying, okay, well, I only like a few chapters from this e-textbook, and then go find a few, other chapters from other e-textbooks. That's fine. It's all pretty much the same sphere as long as it's part of the open textbook. And I do that in my physical science class. We use the astronomy e-textbook from OpenStax. We use the physics text from OpenStax, but for like the geology and the oceanography stuff and even the weather stuff, that is coming from other entities. I know that there is a place in Canada that has a great resource for links to open textbooks, and you can go into those, download the PDF, and then rip out what you want and redistribute it, per the spirit of openness on that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kenny, for taking the time to present to us from sunny Austin today. And it looks like maybe you're not experiencing the same cold front that we had here. So
not yet. So it's on its way. But thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. Thank you for all of the attendees and participants. Feel free to reach out and shoot me a question on email or contact me through social media or however. Happy to help.
Okay, great. And don't forget, everyone, this will be recorded and posted on the Summit website. So feel free to share this out with everyone. So, all right. Thanks again, Kenny, and everyone have a great Thursday.